Tonight on Si's Eyes on the Skies.
We'll have a brief warm-up tomorrow where we could see some possible snow. Moving into the weekend, we will for sure see a greater chance of snow, and those cold conditions are going to be continuing through most of the week next week.
Plus, Sara is in the studio with your national forecast. All that and more as this Thursday, February 1st edition of Si's Eyes on the Skies starts right now.
It's Wednesday night on ISU TV, broadcasting live from Ames, Iowa. This is Si's Eyes on the Skies. ISU TV's longest-running television program brings you the weather from around the country to the heart of Iowa. The ISU Meteorology Department team of forecasters keep you ahead of the storm. From Iowa's most trusted weather team, this is Si's Eyes on the Skies.
Welcome back to Si's Eyes. I'm now joined by Garrett. Well, Garrett, yesterday it was completely warmer than yesterday. We're outside right now. It's pretty cool and pretty breezy, would you say?
Yeah, walking to class today, I had to be pretty bundled up. I had a whole scarf jacket and everything going on today, and I was like, this kind of sucks,
Yeah, and
not enjoying it.
It looks like this weekend we're going to be having some good, decent chances of snow coming in, possibly.
Yeah, yep. I did see there was a possible, maybe an inch by Sunday that we could have on the ground. But like I said today, though, those temperatures weren't too warm at all. But hopefully by tomorrow they do start to warm up a little bit, which I think is what I have seen, that those temperatures do start to rise just ever so slightly, but then starts to dip back down as we move into the parts of next week.
It'll definitely make it for a great Friday and great start of the weekend.
Always got to start the weekend off warm.
Yeah. So, speaking of the weekend, it's Super Bowl weekend. Do you have any idea of what you're going to be doing? I know it's definitely a lot colder up in Minneapolis. Sara will probably talk about that in our national forecast.
Yeah.
So do you have any idea?
I'm just going to be working for Sundays. Hopefully it's not going to be too cold and too snowy on Sunday. But kind of before we move into the weekend too much, it does start to warm up, which is fairly nice. For right now anyway, we do have temperatures in kind of the single digits and low teens all across Iowa, and going back all across Iowa, and I'll have more on that coming up. Maybe. I don't know. Yeah.
All right, and now it's time for tonight's weather story. On this date in 1989, an unseasonably warm January 31st came to an end, an abrupt end, as a strong Arctic cold front swept across Iowa, kind of like it did today, ushering in much colder weather for the first few days of February. The frontal passage was marked by very sharp temperature drops, particularly across the western half of the state, where many stations reported falls of more than 50 degrees from their afternoon highs on the 31st to the morning on the 1st. And now we turn to Sara with a look at what's going on around the country.
Thanks, Matt. And half of the country is really cold this week, and the other half is looking still like warm temperatures. But what will the Super Bowl be like this Sunday? Stay tuned to find out.
Welcome back. Now we are joined by Sara with a look at what's happening around the nation. Sara?
Thanks, Matt. As I mentioned before, around the nation, it's still a little bit split here. Up in the north, much cooler temperatures. Minneapolis is at 4 degrees, and we're going to be touching on that state a little bit later because that is where the Super Bowl is. But down south, they're still seeing those warmer temperatures. And if you take a closer look, the jet stream is dividing the country just in half, which is why we're seeing the cooler temperatures up north and the much warmer temperatures down south. And up in the northeast, pretty uniform temperatures across. Caribou is coming in at the coldest at 29 degrees. And down in Buffalo and the Pittsburgh area, there's actually a 10-degree difference there at 27 and 36. So again, still cool temperatures, but much of a divide there as well. And down south is where we are seeing the warmest temperatures currently in the nation. Down in Miami, they're sitting at 71, which I would kill to be in that type of weather right now. And up in the Atlanta, Georgia area, they're a little bit cooler at 59, but again, nothing as cold as we're seeing in the Midwest here. Down in the southwest, we are seeing warmer temperatures, much like we did see back in Florida. Phoenix is sitting at 79, which might be the warmest temperature in the country today, but up north, we're starting to see that divide again and that pull for cooler temperatures. And up in the northwest again, we are seeing Glasgow's at 4 degrees, which is again close to that Minneapolis temperature, and much cooler temperatures overall. If we take a look at going into tonight and tomorrow, the nation is pretty clear as a whole. Out in Iowa here, we're seeing some pretty clear skies that you might have noticed today, but the only storm system we're really seeing over here is out in the east coast. They're seeing a little bit of rain, snow mix, and lots of cloud covers out in the west that will be developing into something later on this week. Some watches and warnings, again, as I mentioned before, nothing too major happening. They're seeing a winter weather advisory down here, which was that storm system I briefly mentioned before. And up in Minneapolis, that's a freeze warning, which again will affect our Super Bowl forecast coming up in a little bit. Moving on into Friday and into the weekend, this storm system, as I mentioned before, will be moving out into the Atlantic, and the Midwest is staying pretty clear, just a little bit of cloud cover here and there. And then out in the Northwest is where we're starting to see some little bit of snow moving into the country, but again, nothing too major. And as we move into Friday night, it'll clear up down in the Midwest area, but we're starting to see a little bit of snowfall in the northern Minneapolis area and cloud cover across Iowa. That'll pretty much stay constant throughout Saturday, and that's where we're seeing finally the heavy snowfall up in the Wisconsin, Minneapolis, and out in the Montana area, which will stick around and will be affecting the weather there on. Tomorrow, the highs are looking very consistent as they were to today. Minneapolis will be at 15 degrees, so that's a little bit warmer than they were seeing. But again, down south, they're starting to see the 70 degrees. But again, mainly across the country, we're seeing anything between the 30-degree mark and the 50-degree mark, which is very typical for this time period. As many of you know and probably have been talking about, the Super Bowl is coming up this Sunday. The Eagles versus the Patriots, and it is in Minneapolis. The kickoff is at 5:30 p.m. and during the game, we're going to be seeing temperatures around that 8-degree mark. It's going to be pretty cloudy. Luckily, we aren't seeing any chance of snow or rain during that time period, but it is inside anyway. And then finally, when everyone's leaving for the game, it's going to be extremely cold. We're going to be seeing some high winds, clear skies luckily, but again, we're going to be just below the freezing mark there. And looking at the week ahead in Minneapolis, as I mentioned before, they will probably be getting some snowfall on that Saturday, and that will just be on the Saturday and possible on Friday. It'll clear up throughout the week. We're going to be seeing some cloudy skies. Finally, on Wednesday, Thursday, we'll probably start to see the sun, but again, looking at the 14-15 degree mark with the low around 0.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Well, let's take a look at tonight's Super Bowl-related trivia question. What was the coldest game time temperature for the Super Bowl? Was it A, 37 degrees, B, 38 degrees, C, 39 degrees, or D, 40 degrees? We'll have your answer coming right up. Now let's have a look at the week ahead with Garrett.
Thank you so much, Matt. As I mentioned before, we could have a possible chance of snow tomorrow as those temperatures do start to rise just a little bit. And then by the weekend, we have those continued snow chances, what we could possibly see up around an inch. And then once again, by the rest of that week, temperatures are going to continue to stick around those teens and low 20s. We'll have more on that coming up. Welcome back. I'm Garrett Hyde. And if any of you guys were walking around outside today, you noticed it was rather chilly out with those pretty high winds coming out of the north. Currently right now, it is starting to cool down even more as those clouds are not present. That's going to allow those temperatures to drop even further. Right now, we do have temperatures are in those low teens with winds still out of the north, kind of at around 8 miles an hour. Temperature for most of the parts across the state, we are kind of that same story. The more northern halves are going to be in those single digits, and even down below, we are still in those teens, and including kind of more eastern parts of the state. Pretty chilly temperatures for most of the state. Winds as well coming out are predominantly out of the north. You can kind of see here Mason City, 21 miles an hour. Ames here is about 16, making it feel really chilly, continuing to pull down those really cold temperatures for most of today. Satellite radar, as I mentioned earlier, there was not a lot of cloud cover. This is going to lead to where we can see lows for tonight are going to drop down to about 3 degrees. That is pretty cold. Fortunately, though, those winds do start to die down ever so slightly, but those winds do start to sound here. You can notice how there's a west-southwest. That is going to change ever so slightly for the time when we move tomorrow. Do start to have a slight warm-up as we do hit about 27 degrees, which is kind of a little bit warmer than it was yesterday. I could imagine seeing those come up a little bit. We do have a chance of flurries for tomorrow, but that's going to be predominantly for parts of the afternoon. Highs for most of the across the state, once again, kind of in those 20s. We got 24 Waterloo, Spencer, 28. We're on the western half into the 30s, and then back over to the east, we are still in those mid-20s. For tomorrow, though, those temperatures are going to be sticking pretty level to what those highs were, partly due to the increased amount of cloud cover. Kind of, if you notice, there wasn't 23 in Ames is pretty close to what we had for the high of 27 for tomorrow. Kind of that same general trend, warmer off to the west, a little bit cooler off to the east, kind of the same thing as well. But this futurecast, what I'm just going to show in here is just for the winds. So you kind of notice that those winds went from the north, and they are going to start to shift from the south, which is going to allow those temperatures to start to rise ever so slightly. We're going to start to see a bit of a warm up as we move into Saturday. And once again, here we do have those winds still staying out of the south, which is going to pull in those warmer air, including those clouds. And then by late Saturday, we do start to see right up north those winds start to shift out of the north, which is going to change those things. It's going to change the conditions down to much cooler as we move into Sunday. 7-day extended forecast. Friday, we do have that 20% chance of flurries later in the afternoon. Saturday into Sunday, we do as well have those chances of snow, and I think accumulated snow I saw was maybe 0.2 of an inch. By Monday, we do have a continued amount, about around 60%. We could see a possible inch fall, and as I mentioned, those temperatures hit about 41 by Saturday, and then immediately that dropped down to 15, and those temperatures are going to be continuing to stick around those 20s for the rest of the week into next week.
All right, thank you, Garrett. Let's take another look at tonight's Super Bowl-related trivia question. What was the coldest game time temperature for the Super Bowl? Was it A, 37 degrees, B, 38 degrees, C, 39 degrees, or D, 40 degrees? So, well, what do you guys think? Because I know our Twitter followers out there did not get this right. A lot of them are going with A, and I'll be frank with you, only about 6% of them got it right. So what are you guys thinking about?
Well, wasn't this considered the Ice Bowl with Green Bay, I believe?
The Ice Bowl was not the Super Bowl. It was the Cowboys against
sorry, that was
Packers.
I was thinking something else.
A lot of people think this year's is going to be one of the coldest, but
I mean, Sara mentioned 8 degrees.
But they're playing inside.
Game day, I cannot imagine playing in that. Luckily, you did say inside, but I don't know. I might go with B on that 38.
I mean, they're all just so close together.
What were you thinking, Sara?
Probably.
Oh, there's the answer. It was C. So only about 6% of our Twitter followers got this question right. The majority of our followers said it was 37. Fun fact, that happened in Super Bowl VI back in 1972, and of all places, down in New Orleans. So before they had the Super Bowl down there.
Wow.
So that's kind of an odd place to have the coldest Super Bowl out there.
I mean, that's not terrible. We've seen some pretty cool
40,
temperatures.
I can deal with. I can live with 40.
I can take 40. That's how I feel.
40 any day,
Above
especially
that
if it's in
mark, I'm great.
New Orleans. That's like a kind of a moist 40.
Yeah.
Well, 40 right now would be pretty nice, but yet we've been spoiled with the 50s, so people are just like, oh my God, it's so cold outside.
Right.
Well,
And unfortunately, that's going to keep going until next week. And I mean, I hate wearing a bunch of layers, but unfortunately, going to keep wearing those layers all the way until maybe the end of next week.
Right. But we can have pretty consistent temperatures.
Well, think about it. We haven't had that major snowstorm yet, so it could be a lot worse with that snowpack on the ground. So, but it's typical for February, I guess. We're still in winter.
Yep.
And
we are definitely not going to be
still
warm
got
until about March, May.
And tomorrow's Groundhog Day, so 6 more weeks.
Hopefully
possibly.
less. Hopefully less winter. We don't want to see that much more. I would like to see spring right around that corner.
Me too.
We all probably do.
I would agree with that.
I definitely want to start wearing my shorts again.
Yeah. Well, that concludes tonight's show. Please be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. You can find every show on our YouTube channel under Size Eyes. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next Tuesday.